Folks, I'm Scott Hunter, and you might know me. I've been involved with .NET all the way since like 2007, and the rebuild of .NET through the .NET Core journey to where we are today with .NET Aspire. And I am so excited to be here today with Norm Johnson from AWS. We think .NET has always been bigger than just Microsoft. And what a better way to prove that than to have Norm from AWS show how you can use Aspire to take your .NET applications written in Aspire and host them in AWS. And so, super excited to have you here, Norm. Can't wait to see the demos and see what you're going to show. And I will get on Microsoft and put on my Azure hat.
I realized I have an AWS shirt, but we're not showing shirts here. So,
but it's great to have you here, and let's get started.
All right. So yeah, Scott said, my name is Norm. I'm a principal engineer at AWS. I've been there for a good 14 or so years, focusing on all of AWS's .NET libraries and tools and working with service teams to help build their .NET experience for AWS. And like Scott, been in .NET since the 1.0 days. So, deep involved in this stuff. So love the tech.
We can be honest. We actually, you might shock the world, but actually Norm and part of the .NET team and we chat all the time. Because once again, we want to make sure that .NET's awesome everywhere, including AWS. So that's it's great to have Norm as a advocate and evangelist for .NET over wherever he's at. So I think Norm, you love .NET as much as the rest of us.
Yeah, it's a great tech. Got me out of that Java world. Who wants to do that, right? Okay, so yeah, at AWS, I think we're very excited about what we can do with Aspire. Building applications for the cloud is not the simplest thing. And Aspire gives us a way to try to really focus on making that dev inner loop of building cloud applications a lot easier. And that's where we've been really focusing on a lot for Aspire, is that dev inner loop. In our case, like you're in your application, you're in your ID, I'm writing code. Now I realize, wait, now I need a queue or a topic or a table, whatever it is. How do I get those resources provisioned and get it into my code? And I just want to do everything right inside my ID where I'm at. And that's how we've been focusing on integrating all that experience inside that app host startup experience. So today, everything that we've delivered for Aspire is all in a NuGet package out there called Aspire Hosting AWS. You can add that to your Aspire App Host project, and everything that we show today can be lit up for you. So for us, we're going to do our provisioning of resources using a service from AWS called AWS CloudFormation. Now, for those maybe not on the call who are familiar with AWS CloudFormation is a service where you essentially define all of your resources that you need for your applications in a template. It's usually in JSON or YAML, and has all the resources you need. You send that to CloudFormation, and CloudFormation will then create all of your resources as a unit. It lets you kind of think of your unit, or your resources as a single unit or stack, as they call it, and I can update them and delete them all together. Now, I am terrible PowerPoint person. This is, so we're really just going to look at this in code. We're just going to go to Visual Studio. Visual Studio is our exciting place, right? So this is a very simplistic application just to sort of show off the tech here. It's my US zip code lookup table thingamabobber. I should come up with a good name. So, but I got my front end application here, and it's going to talk to our backend API to go look up the US postal zip codes and present that information to the user. Nothing too exciting, but allows me to show off what we're talking about. So we've seen a few talks this week about our Aspire and App Host. So looking at that, here it's, we got our 2 projects that we've added in. Here's our API project and our front-end project, which has a dependency on that API project. Now, the AWS specific stuff that we've added here is, first is I've added this SDK config. How do I actually want to connect to AWS? So all of our integrations is using our .NET SDK under the covers. So this is going to tell us I want to use my .NET Conf profile. It's the profile to get my credentials, and which AWS region do I want to connect to? I'm going to go to the US West 2 region here because I live out on the West Coast. Then we're going to go and create our CloudFormation template here. So this is going to basically be an Aspire resource representing a CloudFormation stack. We give it a reference to our SDK config so it knows how to go and connect to AWS. And then we pass in our CloudFormation template, what we actually want to use to do that provisioning. So here, we're just going to quick look at that template here. My application is super small. It just needs a dynamic table here, but I could have any number of resources out here that I've defined. And then importantly, I've got this output parameters. And the output parameters is what's kind of key to our Aspire integration, because we take these output parameters, and then as when we assign them as references to our projects, all those output parameters become available to our application. So our application here is going to know about the table that we just provisioned. So let's start this up and see what that looks like here. See which screen is it going to go to. Wrong screen. Here we go. So the dashboard that we've seen this week, all my projects are currently all waiting because they're waiting for my resources to be provisioned. So this is where CloudFormation is taking my template and it's actually taking the work of spinning up my dynamic table. Now, since this is like the first time I've run this, demo today, so it's actually creating that stack for me for the first time, and has to create those resources. As I'm iterating over my code, and I'm not changing my CloudFormation template or anything, this step will be a simple no-op. All we're going to do is essentially call, no changes, and get back the output parameters. So you only have that sort of delay of your debugging when you're changing what you're provisioning. So let's go ahead and look at our application here. So we got our API, we have a data loader here. So, because of course, when we provision our table, it doesn't actually have any data in there. So let's actually get that just to fill it up. Looks like it's getting there pretty quickly for me. We have that. So let's see what our application looks like. Why is this sticking up? There we go. You can see beautiful UI skills I have. So I actually live out here in Redmond. I live in the backyard of the .NET team, monitoring what they're doing. That's what they pay me for, to spy on them very closely here. Here's the beautiful area of Redmond, Washington, suburb of Seattle. So, but you can see this is how we use, that dev loop, but we didn't go to the console or anything like that. Just part of our app host experience, we're able to create our resources and start using them right away in code. I think I skipped how I actually use that in code, though. Let me go back there. So in my app host, the pattern I've been doing is essentially I create a class that represents all those AWS resources, essentially all those output parameters. So that in this case is just that table that I just created. And then I bind that in the configuration to go get that. By default, we stick all of the configuration in the AWS resources section. You can change that to whatever you want. When you add that with reference, you can say, I want it to go under the Scott resources, whatever you want. Once I got that, then I can now just access my tables there. So that's how we kind of glue the provisioning to our application code. So that's CloudFormation, and that's what we released as part of the initial launch of Aspire. As part of the .NET 8 cycle, and Aspire went out, we shipped that. Now, as part of the .NET 9 cycle, we've added support for AWS Cloud Development Kit. We also call it just CDK. What CDK allows us to do is be able to put a programmatic experience and abstraction on top of CloudFormation. I can just write C# code instead of writing JSON or YAML files. Also, because it's code, we can, we all know how to put layers and layers of abstractions, so we can simplify a lot of our things. That little code snippet on the side, you can see I create a queue and a topic and I add a subscription. If I was to write that actually in the JSON version of this one, it would be much larger because you actually create a subscription, you have to create a policy, you have to create the access rights. All those things are done through those higher level abstractions that CDK provides for us. Now, it's important to know, though, that CDK is a technology with AWS that actually supports multiple languages, multiple platforms. At its lowest level, it's actually written in TypeScript, and then we have language bindings to lots of languages like .NET. This does mean in order to use CDK, you have to have Node.js installed. But with our integrations with Aspire, that's all you have to do is just have it installed. Normally, when you work with the CDK, even with .NET, you still have to use the CDK's Node.js CLI to drive the experience. But now with our CDK experience, it's just going to be all done for you as part of that F5, I'm starting at my app host experience. So let's go see what that looks like. So wrong, there we go. So here is my customer feedback application here, right? I got a front-end application that allows me to enter in some feedback on a product, and then it's going to send its messages to a topic, and then I've got a queue set up on that topic, and our processor is going to be pulling those messages off, and I believe what we're doing, I don't believe, but we're going to go do some sentiment analysis on that to see how good is that feedback. So just using our sentiment analysis, our comprehend service to see if the feedback is positive or negative. So let's start that up again. Okay. So we're using the CDK, but again, it's still using CloudFormation under the covers. What CDK does is when we run that C# code, it's actually going to go and generate those resources or generate a CloudFormation template and then send that to CDK. So here's actually going and creating those resources. Now, what happened in the app host project, well, that's spinning up there, is I have my two projects as we saw before. We have our SDK config, but now we actually have this add CDK stack. And that's going to create me a Aspire resource representing that CDK stack. It's still a CloudFormation stack, though. The programming model for a CDK, though, is you create a class from CDK that extends from the CDK stack class. And that's where we have that creating a topic and a queue and those output parameters on there. So if I want to add any more resources, I just go to those class and I just create those resources in there. So at this point, all our resources are created. I can see my application here. I can see, like, if I looked at my front end, we can see that those resources have now been assigned on here. That's how they're going to be accessed on. I can go to it and I can say product C.9 best version of .NET ever. Right? Surely, that's the right answer, right, Scott? Okay. So we sent that off. And I suspect if we go look now in our processor, you can see that the feedback was positive. We got all those things connected up to it. Now, to drive home what I really want this is for that dev experience, let's now use this example of how I just iterate over my code and my resources. So if I look at my handler, it's got this big to do because all we're doing right now is we're just writing the output to the console. We should do something with that feedback. So we should put a data store on there. In AWS world, the most likely place we do that is we put that in a downbeat table. So I want to put this item here in there. So to do that, I'm going to update my application code to persist that information. Then I need to go provision that table and then map it back together. So first part, super simple. Let's just add that in here. Dynamic context. I've already added the dependency injection services in there, so I kind of cheated a little bit. And okay, so that's my application code. All we need to do, because that's all our work is as devs, right? We just add a single line of code and then we charge the big bucks for it. But now I need to actually provision that table. I need this to go somewhere. So let's go to our stack. And I'm going to create a table. So I'm going to say I want a new table, and there's a V2 version of this construct. And I'm going to call this feedback table. And every one of these constructs, they take in a property object, table props v2. So here I'm going to say building. This is just my dev table. I'm not really too much about scaling. So this is just going to be, I want this an on-demand table. So if I'm not using anything, it's not doing anything. Schema here, all I care about is a key. This is going to be like the ID column on my object here. So I'm going to say new attribute. Name is ID, because that's the name of the property on my type, and it is of type string. Last thing I'm going to do here is, by default, CDK is very conservative in making sure, hey, this is a table. Maybe you got something important in here. So when you delete your stack, let's not delete maybe any important data. This is just my dev table. I just want it to go away when I'm done for the day. So I'm going to just say, I don't really care about this table. When I delete the stack, delete the table. And that's how it is. Our table's not going to be provisioned when I do F5 and debug my application. But the last step I need to do, though, is I need to actually get this connected to my application. This is going to create a table, but my application doesn't know the name of this table yet. I'm going to add an alpha parameter, just copy paste, because again, that's what we do. We copy paste. And let's see, this is table name. So now that'll now be put in as part of our resources that are going to be assigned to our application. If we look at my processor here, again, I'm using that same pattern I talked about before, where we have that AWS resources object, which has all of what I'm currently putting on there. So I'm going to just add that new thing I just added. Okay. So now in our application, we're going to actually have access to the name of the table that we can now use. Last thing I just need to do is I need to tell DynamoDB about that. I need to map that, do that type. This is add mapping, new table mapping, type of. This is that feedback item that we saw me using in the handler. It's going to map to that property there. All right, get everything in there. Okay, so I did all right. We live coded this. We'll see if we added a backend data store to our application. It's a very sophisticated application, I know. So let's see here. There we go, spinning up. Dashboard's going to come to the wrong screen again. Yes, it did. Always does. Okay, here we go. Again, since I mutated my stack, I added a new resource. This time it's going to take a little bit of time to do those resourcing. Generally, when you're just creating things like topics and queues, those things that you're generally using in applications, those provision pretty quickly, unless you were like just say, hey, I want like huge, enormous scalings on the table or something like that. Should be quick. See if I stalled long enough for this to go. It's about to get done here. Finish tables creating here. It's a good time to take a drink while it goes. All right. And there we go. All done. So now we got our 3 alpha parameters on here. Go look. We can now see on our application, we've got now we've got our table name is being assigned on there. Go in there. Say this is .NET Week, right? So way better than .NET 1 was, right?
Oh yes.
Not saying anything bad about .NET 1. It was a good day, but
.NET 2 was the first good one.
Yeah. Okay, so there we set it in there, and let's see if we did everything right. We should have, here's our tables that just got allocated as part of our debugging experience, and we put it in there. So this is, again, how we kind of iterate with all staying in our IDE, our allocations of resources, connecting in there and testing it all up, staying in our .NET land with all of our AWS resources together. All right. So the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about with, we're going to demo CDK now. Scott's that. So this isn't so much directly about what AWS is doing with Aspire. I just want to I think this is really great what Aspire is doing is bringing open telemetry much easier to to us as .NET developers, making it so that, putting in the dashboard traces and metrics, making it a lot, lowering the bar for everyone to get involved in using this in our applications. In AWS world, you can do this with, you can enable AWS by turning in adding that open telemetry instrumentation AWS package. You do that, and then that's going to help you see inside your Aspire what actually we're doing under the covers. Are you calling more than you mean to be doing? Things like that. For example, what we just did, right? So here I've already added in my services default that package, and you can see where we added the metrics and tracings. I've turned on the AWS telemetry on there. So if I go back to the dashboard and look at what we just did, so here's where this is all that work that when I submitted that feedback, you can see, yeah, we sent it to SNS, and SNS sent it to our messaging library, or we sent it to the detect service, and then to DynamodB. All that we can get a visibility of what our application is doing. And this becomes actually really useful when you start using some of our higher level constructs, and you're wondering, like, is this making a bunch of calls that I didn't know about? It gives you much better insight of what's being done under the covers. All right, I think that was the bulk of what we wanted to talk about. Just wanted to kind of wrap up again. Everything that we have here is in that Aspire hosting AWS NuGet package. Before this week, it was marked as preview, but with the release of .NET 9 this week, we've now made that GA. We also, we're using CloudFormation for provisioning, but you have your choice. Do I want to do this in a programmatic fashion or declaratively, whichever one you feel more comfortable with? As Maddie and Damien mentioned on their talk earlier this week, we have recently just created our new repository out there that contains all of our AWS work in here. It used to be all part of the .NET Aspire repository, but now we've got our own, and this is we think, allow us to iterate faster on what we want to do. We can drive our own release schedules. You can see I even started this week of creating a new PR where we could add DynamodB local as there. So imagine being able to, inside your app host, just say, I want to use DynamodB local, and then all of your application calls inside your app would be not hitting the real service, but using local. This is something I'm currently working on, but this is also where we really would like the community who use AWS and interested in Aspire to come join us on this repository. Give us your ideas, your feedbacks, your pull requests, and see where you want us to go. Lots of things that we can do in this space to make that dev loop really great. Again, another shout out for OpenTelemetry. And the last thing I just kind of wanted to call it is, thanks to Scott and the whole .NET team for their partnership, including us in there, and seeing what we can build for a better, bigger .NET community out there. I think there's a lot we can do with Aspire and AWS, and I'm hoping the community helps joins us with that and seeing what we can do to build that experience. That's what I got.
I'll double down and say the same thing. I'm so happy for the partnership, Norm, and I'm so great to see Aspire. Our goal was to make Aspire be agnostic to clouds, and so it's great to see Aspire working so well for local AWS development. So awesome.